Good morning, everyone, and welcome to BU Breakdown. I'm your host, Carl. Guys, I have missed you so much. It's been like a minute since I've been here, but I am so excited to be back. I've spent the last couple weeks without you, just trying to fill my time with knitting and weaving. Actually, I even took up whittling. Yeah, except you're not allowed to have knives that are too long in New York City, so I've been using that like little part of nail clippers that you're supposed to scrape dirt out from under your nails with. It works surprisingly well. Yeah. Well, all this to say, I'm excited to be back, but I am more excited to bring out our guests for this week. So shall we get started, guys? Welcome. This week I have one of our favorite guests, and definitely our favorite Hamilton on Broadway actor and activist, Mr. Antuan Raimone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Antuan. How's it going?
Great. I really enjoyed your introduction about the whittling with the little part of the nail file. You're ridiculous.
Right? No, I've got a lot of little scraps of wood around. Kelly's gonna yell at me if I don't. Kelly's my fiance. She's gonna yell at me if I don't clean them up.
You should start with soap so that you can use it in case you mess up.
Ooh, that's fancy. That's smart. That's very smart. Next, our other guest that we have on for today is Harris Doran. Harris is a filmmaker, and he wrote and directed a new film called Beauty Mark, which is what we're going to be discussing today. Harris, good morning. Thanks for coming on to talk with us.
Thanks for having me. I've been wiggling too.
You've been whittling?
Yeah, wiggling too, right? Wiggling?
Wait, are you saying like wiggling? Like the Wiggles?
Oh, I thought that's what you... Oh, okay.
Hey, whatever you do on your free time, I am a supporter of. If you want to wiggle or if you want to whittle, it's all great.
Wiggling, right?
So guys, before we get into this discussion today, since we're talking about this film, I wanted to ask you guys about a film as well. Guys, what is your favorite movie of all time? What is your favorite film that when people ask you, what is your number one or at worst top three?
Oh, man.
I'll go ahead and start because obviously I've had a little more time to think about it, and I'll let you guys sit on it. I normally like to say that my favorite is Princess Bride, because I can watch Princess Bride in any mood. If I'm sad, I can watch it. If I'm in a great mood, I can watch it. If I want a little romance, if I want a little action, I feel like it's just it's always been there for me. It has always supported me. And so I love it.
Nice. I'm not much of a repeat movie watcher, but I will say one of the movies when I watched it that it just really had such a huge impact when I watched it was, damn, and I just lost the name of the movie. Awesome setup. No, what is it called? Oh, Crash. Yes.
Yeah.
It's an ensemble cast, and it's one of those movies where you meet, there's several different storylines, and then you figure out that all of them are connected somehow, whether they've encountered each other throughout the course of their day. But it shows the reality of just humanity and biases, ignorances, prejudices, fears, hopes, and all of those things. And there was just a scene in it that you think someone gets shot in the scene, and I was just about a mess in the movie theater when I watched it. Like, no! But it was just such a powerful movie. And that was back in like 2005 when I saw that. But it still holds a spot in my memory.
Totally. Harris, what about you?
I mean, I think my favorite movie of all time, it's hard to pick one. A movie that I'm very influenced by that I've seen many, many times is Paris, Texas, the Vendors movie from the early 80s. That is a brilliant, brilliant movie that it won Cannes, and it was really, it's an amazing movie worth seeing. That is about this man who he's been like wandering in the desert and he doesn't speak, and he like shows up back at his brother's house, like his long lost brother, and it's a bunch of like intersecting you know, psychological and family like relationships that are like really complex and really difficult, and the movie is filmed extraordinarily well. It's a very beautiful film that is a slow movie that like builds to a huge climax that is really heart-wrenching. But I also like Goonies.
Oh, yes.
The first one, it's so funny, our reactions there. You were talking about Paris, Texas, and we were all like, wow, artsy, wonderful. And then you say Goonies, and we're like, yeah, Goonies. Remember that part where he said booby trap? I do too.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Classic.
So we have the Facebook Live video or Facebook Live feed, and we asked people what their favorite film was. And my fiance's real, truly favorite film is Thor Ragnarok. We went and saw the film. She turned to me afterwards and she went, I think that was my favorite movie I've ever seen. You know, just like whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, great.
She's gonna be mad at me. We are about 15 seconds ahead of the Facebook video. She's gonna start commenting here in a minute and be like, y'all are haters, don't even talk. So Harris, tell me, give me a little rundown of your movie Beauty Mark for those watching who haven't seen it. Tell us a little bit about what it is.
Sure. So Beauty Mark is a feature film that follows the story of Angie, who is a young mother in Louisville, Kentucky, who is poverty-stricken. She's taking care of her 3-year-old son. She has this alcoholic mother that she takes care of, Catherine Curtin, who's from Orange is the New Black, and she's on Homeland now, and she's done a bunch of theater in New York. And they find out that the house that they're living in is condemned, and they have to move immediately, and she's got no money, and so she has to get the money from the only person she knows with any, who is it's a man from her abusive past. And so it's a super intense movie that has been doing really well at festivals all year long. We premiered at the LA Film Festival, and my lead actress, Auden Thornton, who is brilliant, and she went to Juilliard and has done a bunch of theater, and she won Best Actress at our premiere, and the film has won a bunch of awards, and we got picked up by The Orchard, and they distributed it, and so it came out last week and has been doing really well. It was top 20 indie film on iTunes like for a whole week, and so it's been doing really great, and it has like 100 on Rotten Tomatoes.
So I actually, when I was looking it up at first, obviously I like Googled Beauty Mark film and saw that it had a 100% on Frozen. It may come back in here in a sec. But no, it said that it had a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was just like, this must be actually good. This must be a very, very good film. And then I watched it, and it was, in fact, a very, very good film, which was wonderful. If you haven't had a chance to watch, Antuan, what was your... you watched the film too, right?
Yes, I did.
So what was your reaction to the film overall?
An overall reaction?
Yeah, like when it finished, what were your like first thoughts about it?
My first thoughts were like the love of a responsible and present parent really has few boundaries. And when that is someone's motivation, they will do everything that they can to like make sure that their child is safe and happy and healthy, even if it is at the detriment of themselves to a degree. And I think that was not exactly something I was anticipating, like feeling and like reading the description of the movie.
Yeah.
And even as I was watching it, because I had so many like, internal reactions watching the film. But overall, I just thought, wow, there was such beauty in that woman did what she needed to do for her son. And even though it meant addressing all of the dirt and demons that existed for her in ways that she hadn't done in like a controlled environment. Like she just, I mean, like, okay, these are the circumstances. This is what I need. And she hadn't, there was no counseling involved for her. There was, unspoken tension between her and her mom about it. But she's like, well, this is what I need to do. So I'm just going to do what I have to do. And I just thought, woo, man. The scene with her at his home, Harris, I was like, punch him, cut him, something like. But
so Auden Thornton, who plays the character Angie, is a powerhouse.
Yes.
She is amazing. I think that my main thought throughout the film, with all the wonderful things happening, was like, holy cow, she is so incredible. If you want to see some good acting, boy, she's great.
She's one of the best actresses I've ever encountered, which is why I cast her. I literally, like, she was the first person that I saw for the role, and I tried to cancel the auditions because I didn't think it was possible for anyone.
Like, guys, I don't want to waste your time. It's just we found it.
Exactly.
We figured it out.
I was like, I don't want to like waste other actors' time. Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, I tried to cancel. They were like, no, you can't do that. But I knew.
Did you know her at all beforehand?
No, I didn't. I didn't know her. She came in. Henry Russell Bergstein was our casting director, and he, he works at the Vineyard, and they also cast all the Wes Anderson films. And he sent me a list of 30 girls that could be right for the role, from like not famous to super famous. And having been an actor for a really long time, I really like the idea of wasting actors' time. And so I took those 30 girls and I Googled the hell out of them, looking for anything that they'd done that was like on tape, and like whittling it down to 4 girls that I thought might be possible for the role. And then I had 45-minute work sessions with them where it was, I said, like, we're going to look at these scenes, but please don't waste your time memorizing. I know you can memorize. I want you to spend your time just reading the whole script so we can talk about it. And so we met. It was like me and one of my producers in a loft where I had them at the table, not like at a chair away from us, where it just was like, let's have a conversation about this script. Let's have a conversation about life. And then at the end, it was like, hey, can we take a look at these scenes? And I worked with the actors at that point. But Auden was just so extraordinary that it was, an undeniable force. And, certainly that, was consistent in her work on the film, that she just was nonstop. Like she didn't stop. Even when the camera wasn't on her, she didn't stop. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds like a
If
great
you don't know
audition.
who Auden Thornton is, I didn't before the film. Just like be on the lookout, because she's gonna be, there's no way she's not gonna be big, because she's
so extraordinary.
So Harris, tell me, so let's actually, since we're talking about how good she is, I think have a clip from the movie. Before we roll it, Harris, do you want to explain to us what happens in this clip?
It's so in the film, she's trying to figure out how to get this money, and so she at this point is at her wit's end, and she is forced, like asking her mother basically to do something, and her mother is unwilling to, and so that's what this clip is from that scene.
Okay, great. Let's see if we can get this thing rolling.
I don't have a job. We're not allowed to be here anymore.
What do you mean you ain't got your memo?
It's not like it was paying enough anyway.
I can't afford all this on my disability.
You don't have disability anymore.
Yeah, I do. They owe me all that back pay.
No, you don't. They don't owe you nothing.
Oh, they owe me that back pay.
You're living in a dream world. My whole life, you're just sitting around pretending, thinking some other life is happening, some big party out there for you to dance the night away at. When I'm in here the whole time, and you never did nothing.
I put food in your belly. I put a roof over your head.
I needed you to be here. I needed you to see what I've been going through. Okay, I don't have a job.
Oh. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So it builds and builds from there, and that's
that's the beginning of it.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Nice.
So Harris, do you what influenced you to write this film?
Sure. So the film was inspired by true events that happened to one of the film's producers, and so I took that inspiration because it was, I started writing this film in December of 2014. So this conversation about like abuse and like in terms of women was not happening at the time, and I thought it was a really important conversation to be having. And which made it really difficult because people, like the Me Too movement didn't really start in earnest until September. Obviously, it's been around for 10 years with Burke. But, really, with Harvey Weinstein took off in September. And so this was a long time before that. And it made for making the film, every stage of it was very difficult because people did not want to talk about the topic at all. They were like, oh, that's very important, but I don't really want to be a part of it. And so that was sort of what every stage was like, in terms of like, oh, this is very good, but no thanks, because there are things in our society that people don't want to talk about. And so basically they just put blinders on and refuse to even look at. And this movie, makes you look at it. And, it's been really interesting seeing sort of like, so we premiered at LA in June of 2017. And so it's been interesting to see. So, and we had like a really great reception when the film was released at the premiere, but it also had a like this, the audience like wanted to talk about it, but felt very like didn't know how to talk about it. And then seeing audiences change over the last year has been amazing because of like the movement, and seeing how people have been like, they very much want to talk about what's happening in this film. And so it's really great the society, our society open up to beginning to talk about things. I mean, like Harvey Weinstein and the Me Too movement is like just the very beginning of like what needs to happen in this country and the conversation that needs to happen in terms of women, in terms of child abuse. Because underneath, the Me Too movement is, you're talking about a society where 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are abused as children, sexually abused as children, and no one wants to talk about it because it's such an uncomfortable conversation. And what happens is you don't talk about it, and it just continues because you get away with it because no one's talking about it. So in the shadows, this happens. And so, you know, that's underneath is like, you know, right now our country is going through, you know, a facial, if you will. Like to the surface is sort of, I think, what's happening in this country. But we need to really dredge up all the what's underneath. And you know, this country is, you know, a lot of bad stuff that no one talks about, of like the foundations of this country. I think that, you know, things are beginning to rise up, but I think that there are a lot of conversations that need to be had that are now beginning.
Totally. You know, I think that that was definitely like a theme in the movie, was that, you know, one of the issues was that the guy who is an abuser, Bruce, is also, you know, made all the new pews at church, and so he's this member of the community who's respected, and so people don't want to talk about the possibility of him having done the things that he obviously did.
Generous, valuable member of the community.
Yeah. So Antuan, with your experience with speaking and doing all the work that you've done, speaking out for survivors, have you noticed a change, like Harris was saying, over the past few months of people being more receptive to this topic?
What I've been aware of as I've been speaking more and sharing it within my life circle, to me, talking about my experience as a survivor of sexual abuse is not new to me. It's been something that's been with me for a while. It's been a conversation I've been having for a while. And I've been reminded that for people in my life, it is a new conversation for them to hear, especially from my own mouth. As much as like I've never shied away from talking about it, but it's one of those things where it's not necessarily something that comes up over dinner or over drinks or at an, you know, when you're spending time with friends. But if it comes up, I'll talk about it. But it's kind of like, well, when does that sort of topic even come up? So for that, I've had to remind myself, oh, to a lot of people, this is new information. And it is also taken a topic that seems very on the outskirts of our day-to-day, our reality, our social circles, and I have brought it much closer to those people who know me. And with that, I've had so many people say, thank you so much for your bravery. Thank you for sharing. And for me, I don't share my story to create, like, for my own bravery. I share my story for those people who do not have their own, and for people who feel that they are alone with it. I mean, and when we were raising money for the Give Back concert, I was blown away by the swiftness upon which people donated to it. And it's like, wow, okay. It's one of those things where I understand the fear of having the conversation, but you miss out on the beauty that comes from having the conversation, because the beauty is the support. The beauty is the awareness. The beauty is the willingness to help people who need it. And that's why having these conversations is so necessary. That's why, you know, to piggyback off of your analogy of like a facial, it's why people garden. People who love gardening, they don't mind getting in the dirt, because when you get in the dirt and you figure out what you need, when you get rid of the stuff that is not healthy, that will not help things grow, you can then create a foundation that is going to make beautiful things happen. And beauty comes from dirt. Beauty comes from all the things that are gross and disgusting, because it has to get all of whatever nutrients it needs in order to, there's a reason why shit is used as fertilizer. Like it's necessary.
Yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
and what's so wonderful to me, you know, so we have, this is on Facebook Live, obviously, and we've got people who are sharing their own projects and plays and pieces that are speaking out on this topic. One of which is the Me Too plays, which Celine Francis Havard shared on our in our comments, and it's artists that are leading this conversation. And it seems that this was a conversation that wasn't wanting to really be had until artists decided to speak out on that. Harris, when you were making this film, you know, did you feel a responsibility as an artist to use your platform? And alongside that, did you have people telling you not to speak out on this?
I did feel a responsibility. You know, I think that art is able to speak about these topics in a way that other things are not, because, you know, when you go see a movie, people leave and they talk about the movie, you know, and so there is extreme value to that in a way that, you know, I've seen many people at our screenings around the country who basically took the moment of the screening as the impetus to be able to like finally tell someone, you know. At our Louisville screening where we filmed, it was like a really big screening last summer. It was like 600 people, and Jameson, who is the 3-year-old in the film, his grandmother, came up to me and was like, "I want to tell you a story." She was like, "You know, I was sitting there and I was with an old friend they've been friends for 50 years since childhood, and she was there with her, and she turned to her during the Q&A and was like, that happened to me. I haven't told anyone like all of these years, and you're the first person I'm telling." And when I heard that, like, I was so moved by it, of that people, you know, need this, like, oh, here's this one boat that's like floating by and I'm going to grab it, you know, and I'm going to talk about it, because by talking about it, you can heal, you know, you can help, you can move forward. And so,
Yeah.
you know, for me, when I was, yeah, it's amazing. But I have many stories like that. And so when I was, you know, writing the film, you know, I did feel a responsibility. The reason I wanted to make the film is you know, when I heard, you know, my producer was telling me, you know, things that happened to her, I just thought it was so important. It was something not being spoken about. So I didn't think of it as like a revolutionary thing to do. I thought of it as like, oh, this is important. It's not being talked about. Like, we should talk about it. And so I did a lot of research, and I worked with people to make sure that like the script was, you know, really representing, you know, what women go through, you know, people go through, you know, who are survivors of sexual abuse, and that is not the same thing for everyone. It's very different for everyone, and people's reactions, what they do with that, and how they process that, and how that affects their lives, you know. And also the film, like, intersects. It's not only about sexual abuse, but it's sort of the intersection of like abuse and like generational abuse, and poverty, and like
yeah, I wanted to touch on the poverty aspect.
Yeah.
That played a big role in the film, is the fact that they, you know, had very, very little money. Is that something that survivors, is that something that often is I'm trying to think of how to say it, kind of like a side effect of abuse? Is it make it so that at times it can be hard to sustain jobs and things like that, you know, and that can lead to impoverished situations?
So everyone the way that abuse affects people is different for each person.
Yeah.
But it affects people in myriads of ways. In this, you know, is a I think, you know, it's a more extreme situation in terms of being able to like hold like the difficulties of what do you do. Like she, you know, the poverty aspect of it is that like how it has affected Angie is her sort of approach to life, which is a kind of get by life. Like I can just get by. Things are fine. They're as fine as long as nothing goes wrong. Like I'm just fine, you know. And that she isn't put in a situation where like something more than that happens, and so then she is not fine, and there is no support. You know, our society. You know, there are a lot of people who, when you think about poverty, like it's not real to them of the, you know, how close to like homelessness, like many people are, and like the, you know, paycheck to paycheck living. And like if you don't have a support system, if you don't have, you know, a family, or you don't have like government there to like help you, like there are many people in a situation of where like they, you know, it's very real, like this destitution that you are on the verge of. And you know, she's put in a position of where like she's going to make sure that that doesn't happen to her son. But you know, that feeling, and the feeling that you get in the movie, that like scraping the bottom of like your soul poverty feeling that you're on the verge of, like many people live with that feeling, you know. And so for me, you know, it was a way of showing how like abuse had affected her you know, ability to really like step out into the world and like be like really proactive about making something of her life, you know, where for her it had been something that stunted her to the point of being like, you know, kind of like more of a recluse, someone who doesn't have a lot of friends, someone who doesn't go outside of her comfort zone, you know. And this movie like makes her do that, and she's doing that not for herself. She's like finding something outside of herself, you know, and that's her son. It's like survival for her son.
Yeah. Antuan, so if you are watching for the first time, at Broadway Unlocked, we're very involved with a group called the Crime Victims Treatment Center. And Antuan does a lot of work with them. Antuan, can you talk to us? The CVTC does a lot of work for people who might not be able to afford help. Can you just talk to us a little bit about like the services that they provide and what finances you may need and things like that?
Well, I'll give you as much information as I have.
Totally. And obviously we'll like put a link in the comments for the CVTC so that people can check them out.
Yeah. So first and foremost, all of the therapy and counseling that they provide is free. It's not based on like who your insurance provider is, or even if you have insurance. When I went to them 8 years ago, I sat down with Christopher Bromson and had an intake meeting. And basically his question was, how can we help you? And I told him why I was there. And then it's like, okay, well, we can provide you the service that you need. And they set me up with a therapist. And then I was informed that they had group therapy for men and also group therapy for women. I did not utilize the group therapy. They have other services for people who are dealing with domestic violence, where they will find you shelter and housing for you and your children, I believe. And I mean, the Crime Victims Treatment Center is a spoke of a larger wheel, which is the Office of Victim Services. And that larger wheel, they provide, I mean, innumerable services for people in need. And with me having been on the advisory council for the past, this is, I guess, going on almost 2 years. Actually, I think October will be 2 years. I'm just kind of scratching the surface of understanding all of the services provided, because we have like monthly conference calls, and it's mostly me listening to them say a lot of words that I don't know what they mean. Because
That's me in
we're
most
talking.
situations, I feel like.
And so I just sit in awe, and it's all services that I personally did not need. You know, growing up, housing was not an issue for me, and I had everything that I needed. And even as I, was an adult, I've been able to like take care of myself financially and all of those things. And health wise, I've been very fortunate. So there are things that were not even in my view of considering for what services could be needed for someone who has dealt with, be it childhood sexual abuse or even domestic violence or sexual assault as an adult. But they, if you are an individual in an abusive relationship, and if for any reason the person that is your abuser is, be it the primary source of income or the majority provider, and you have children, the thought is, where do I go? And if you've been isolated from your family, your friends, you believe there's nowhere you can go. So you can't just pack yourself and your child up, run out of the house, and then what happens? You're sleeping on the street. What do you do? And so that's where the Office of Victim Services come in, where they can help in those situations in finding temporary or somewhat permanent housing. And these are things that people don't, and myself included, don't consider are the ripples that occur after sexual abuse or domestic violence or sexual assault, and because all of that is what happens for people. And,
Well, and I was just going to add on top of all this, if you are not in New York City, if you visit rainn.org, RAINN.org, they are a national group that will help you find services if you're in need and you feel like you don't know where to go.
Yeah,
what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that, it's part of the problem is that, these amazing services, people don't know that they exist, and like when you're in certain situations, the idea, like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to Google this and I'm going to find out, is not real for everyone. Do you know what I mean? And so that's where there's also, like what I've, like in the screenings around the country that we've been doing, like I've been having, different local organizations come and speak, just to help people know that that organization exists. You know what I mean?
That's
so that's
fantastic.
So hears about something, they can tell someone, but the idea that you're in this state, this emotional state, and you're like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to Google, like,
yeah,
some people might, but a lot of people, that's not real.
As well as, talking about poverty, there's a level of poverty where you don't have internet, obviously. That's like a privilege that sometimes I know I don't think about. That information actually gets to a point where you don't have a way to access it. Right. And that pigeonholes you, that makes it so that you can't find help. And I feel like it takes, as you were saying, you have to like have people going out to communities and talking to people to let them know that these services exist.
Yes. And a point I'd like to bring up before we like wrap up, because at the beginning of this, there was talking about the statute of limitations, and that's also a big theme within the film. And the work with me being on the advisory council the last couple of years, I've been privy to the fight in New York City for them to essentially abolish the existing statute of limitations for victims of sexual abuse to bring charges against their abusers, because right now it's 5 years after your 18th birthday, I believe. And so
yeah, it's within 5 years of the incident or 5 years of turning 18.
And so to put that into context, my first incident of sexual abuse was at the age of 7. My second was at the age of 15. And I did not seek any type of therapy until I was 30 years old. And I'm now 38. So that's half a life. And for me, part of my healing and process was not seeking out any sort of justice or legal retribution. But for a lot of people, that is something that would be very important for them. And the fact that these laws exist in states, and sadly, New York is like one of the last cities and states that still has this law. So many of them have ratified it and gotten rid of it. And for the past decade, the CVTC and the Office of Victim Services here in New York have been going year after year after year trying to get this law changed. And they like, pick up speed and they find people that are willing to get behind it. And then it gets there and somehow it stalls and just keeps rolling over. And I don't know. I know. Yeah, go ahead, Harris.
So what most people who are not extremely politically involved don't know about New York is that New York is controlled by the GOP, and it is not a blue state the way that people think it is. There are 8 Democratic senators in the New York State Senate at like the state level. The Independent Democratic Conference, the IDC, they are elected as Democrats. And then once they're in Albany, they give the majority over to the Republicans. And they have stopped all sorts of progressive legislation for 8 years. And most New Yorkers have never heard of them. It's the reason that this doesn't pass. Our primary, they have to be voted out in the primary. It is this year. Thursday, September 13th is the Democratic primary. You have to go to noidcny.org, noidcny.org. Find out, put in your address and see who your state senator is. Most people don't even know they have a state senator. They think it's Chuck Schumer. He's not your state senator. He's U.S. Senator. Gillibrand, those are U.S. senators. Find out who your state senator is. And if they are part of the IDC, you need to go and vote for their primary opponent in the primary. Most New Yorkers don't even vote. 2017 was the lowest turnout ever for New York for voting, right? You need to vote them out in the primary. Cuomo has supported these people for 8 years. This is the reason that this doesn't pass. We don't have Roe v. Wade level protections for women at the state level. That's why we don't have universal health care. That's why this bill doesn't pass. You have to know what the IDC is. You have to find out if you live in one of those districts. And they're not like, oh, upstate is conservative. No, they're mostly in New York City. If you live in Washington Heights, Inwood, parts of like the Upper West Side and Chelsea, parts of Queens, parts of Brooklyn, like you need to look up who in the Bronx, like who is your state senator? And if they are in the IDC, you need to vote them out September 13th so that we can pass these laws.
Thank you. So helpful.
Cuomo
yeah,
I
think this all
on the like Cynthia Nixon doesn't have experience. You need to, then you're not paying attention to politics. You don't know how corrupt Cuomo is and how he's been keeping all this. Vote these people out. Get rid of it.
Yeah, I think this all goes back to the point of we are in a time in the world where there's a lot happening, and if you believe in something and you want there to be change, the very first thing you have to do is show up to the polls and vote. It doesn't matter really what you post on social media or what march you went to. If you don't show up to vote, it doesn't matter. And I think that's a really good reminder. Guys, this has been such a wonderful conversation. It's about time for us to wrap up. Harris, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about your film. Antuan, thank you for joining us. As always, you were so wonderful to have on and so thoughtful.
Thank you. Pleasure.
If you guys are interested in going and watching this film, Harris, will you tell everybody where they can see Beauty Mark?
Yes, you can see it. It's on digital and on demand everywhere. So you can go to iTunes or Amazon or Fandango Now or Vudu. Also, if you just go to like your Apple TV, it's right there. We're on cable. You can like purchase it anywhere right now. It's everywhere. The Orchard is distributing it, and so you just got to go and you can also go to our website beautymarkfilm.com and that has a link there. And if you see the film, please get in touch. I really want to know what you think about it.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. The movie's amazing. Auden Thornton is my new favorite actor. She's phenomenal. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys later. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Hey, what kind of conversations are you interested in? Is there one that you wish that we would talk about on the show? Comment on this video. Tell me what you guys want to hear from us. We want to be having conversations that you take part in and that you're interested in and that you're passionate about. And we would love to hear what those are to you. So make sure you comment them here, and we will be back next week for another show. We'll see you then.